Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build yourself a nuclear power plant. Kitted out with, of course, the cooling towers done in a very easy to build fashion, and even some of the interior pieces done to the best of my ability, and well, nice fences, even a control desk, things like that, in order to make it feel like a real nuclear power plant. Either way, let's begin. Let's get this show rolling immediately. First off, flat area. We already know this part. And now, what we want to do is make a nice circle. We can use a circle generator for this, link in the description to the link tree. And then, you want to make a 31 by 31 circle. You can see, this is in fact 31 by 31. Then, you want to make a rough curvature of what it should look like. Ignore that piece for now. You can see, using, I zoom in, how it goes up, reaches a flat layer that's slightly taller, and then goes back out, but only for a few blocks. This shape is called a hyperboloid, in case you're having trouble with it. And, well, it's not super interesting. So let's make it interesting. Initially, your thought would be, let's connect these pieces, but that would be kind of boring. Instead, here's a new trick. Right here, I'm making a curve on them. And this probably looks really daunting. I'm not that good of a builder. You're watching a tutorial, then my job is to tell you how to do this. So let's start. That little curve here, I added 5 blocks on top of, and now it goes back down, that's a little curve. And then I did the same thing, where I just rounded out the sides like this, and when you round them out, then it makes a little curvature effect. And we slowly converge into the middle, where we go like 3 blocks here, 2, 1, 2, 2, and then straight to 4. Yeah, a little bit of an oddity, but I think I want to keep it that way. And then finally, another 4 that connects it to this gray concrete. For reference, this circle is identical and is precisely 3 blocks above, 3 block gap. And what do you know? We're making a bit of a curve. Then you want to repeat this, and then you reach this part, you mirror it. It should be mostly identical though. I strongly recommend that you make sure that they're identical on each side. And then, right here, we can see where they converge. There is no block that we're building on top of. Instead, we have to make our own rules here. And, we go up, we outline it, and then, when we have this outline, it looks pretty blocky at first. Then, we smooth it out. And then we connect it up here, we remove and add blocks as needed, like this. And we repeat this process until we reach the middle section. Then, we turn upside down. Of course, we don't actually do that, but we essentially do the same process, except we're going up. Your happy ghast will help you immensely with this. Make sure to get one. But yep, this is how you do it. You start with a little bit of a basic idea, and then we add some curves to it, and they slowly converge together. We add some extra blocks to make it a bit more natural, and piece by piece, we make it happen. This is just building. It's actually not that hard of a shape. Going up, you can see our curves are present. Of course, they're still being worked on a little. I build this in real time. I do not do some pre-build and then show you it later. That's only for the intro. So of course, I'm still figuring this out. And you can see right here, looks pretty nice all the way up. It has a nice curve to it. And then we get to the flat part. And this can be a little confusing. Make sure that this flat piece is an odd number of blocks. You can see here, I can cleanly define the middle right here. It's a 7 by 7 square, which means we can actually work with it. It's much easier to work with odd numbered blocks in building, keep that in mind. We do this, we mirror it, and then we build this but upside down until we reach this top layer. When you reach the top layer, do nothing, because, we're going to figure out what we do from there. It's a pretty simple idea. If you're having trouble or want to revisit it in a moment, then you just do the rest of the base. We leave it floating for now. We're going to worry about the inside of it later. Alright, you can see right here, it's all finished. We had the bottom part, I mirrored it onto the top, and then I mirrored it onto all 4 sides. It was a pretty simple process, all things considered, just a bunch of smoothing out of surfaces until you get this hyperboloid shape. And now that it's actually done, you might want to change one thing real quick. Of course, I strongly recommend you watch the whole video before starting, just in case I change something or you want to make it, change of your own. Right here, this flat piece in the middle might not be what you want. You might want to decrease its size. So I'm going to do precisely that, and then you can make the decision for yourself. Do you actually like the new version or not? You can see when it's compressed like this, it has a little bit of a different shape. Whether you want this, it's up to you, but if you do, make sure to crunch this little piece out of it, so that way it looks a little less weird. Now, from here, we can go to the top in a moment, and you can see it's perfectly flat. Change this to gray concrete. Whether you add it on top, make it stick out, or make it part of the original top in order to make its height lower, is up to you. Just add a nice ring of gray concrete, because this will provide some good old contrast, and then maybe we can hide some lights on it so that way this glows in the dark. Right here, you can see it has a little bit of lighting at the top. Along with that, a little bit of red nether brick. That's optional. In reality, the gray should be white if you're doing that, but who cares? In this case, you can see the lighting is done by torches. This is so that way, from the bottom, if you're ever looking up, they'd be relatively unnoticeable, and from afar, they'd look like something that isn't a torch, rather than an actual coal-powered torch. Turning it back to day, well, we have only a little bit more for this cooling plant. And, well, we just need to make sure we have some sort of lattice down here to hold it up. The block is kind of important for this, but also not. Essentially, you want to make almost an A pattern like this. We build it repeatedly, and we make it go across. And then we're going to flood this piece with water. Along with that, any obviously square pieces on the inside should be smoothed out. Like here, I added 2 blocks because it was actually a square. But the rest of it looks pretty fine. Pretty much, we want to get a nice smooth interior even though we're not doing anything to it. We want the impression that we did something. Along with that, these lights, of course, they look like something special, but they're actually just cheap lighting. Things like that. You don't want to worry too much about this because our main part of the build is the fact that we need to build the centers and the reactors. Now, it's time for the interior. It's going to be filled with a lot of science facts, so you can hold down on the screen to speed up the footage if you don't care about that. By the way, add a staircase somewhere on here, preferably an iron door at the top. So here, let's start. The reactor sometimes, well always, has hot water, and that water can get too hot. So we need a cooling tower. Up through this tube in the middle, we'll go up to this lattice of cyan terracotta. You can see how it's almost a grid, but not really. And these will have spray valves on them. They'll go down into these fills, represented by iron bars, in order to increase their air exposure and cool them down. They rain back into this basin, and this basin will have the principle of buoyancy take over. We're hot stuff on top, cold stuff at the bottom. The cold stuff flows down through here, and the hot stuff stays on top so it can continue cooling. That's why we have these gaps here, in order to cool it all down. And then above it, we have these drift eliminators. These make sure that things from, the tubes, not the radioactivity, but things like that, stay within here. And to make sure that we lose less water from the actual process. And then we have these walkways up here. We should probably add iron bar railings onto these because OSHA violation, but, we don't care about workplace safety in this area. Essentially, this is just for maintenance, in case something goes wrong, or in case we just need to repair things, so that way things don't go wrong. Now, we have this tower. Build your staircase, and then, a few blocks away, you'll want to place a second tower. If you want to do the smoke, it will be very difficult. I'm not going to provide any instructions or build it myself. But if you're really determined, you'll want to add almost a weird jagged plume shape. And of course, do this in 3D. But you want it to almost be like this. And we just go outwards. And we do this very, very large out of light gray stained glass. And then you can add little gaps in it to increase how opaque it is. If there's no gaps, then it won't be very opaque. And it'll just appear to be glass. Think of it like that. These usually only appear on cloudy days. Well, they're fog, so only during high humidity conditions. In other words, don't worry about it. It's not a critical part of the build. With that nice little reactor there, added a nice andesite path, we'll texture it later, and a second tower. These two are identical. I swapped my logo onto this one. It's up to you whether you want to actually decorate these towers or not. Most of them remain undecorated in real life, so, up to you. Now, it's time to actually build the reactors, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do the interior because, well, kind of important, and this time it's not going to be a bunch of tuff lying around in a glass container. What was I thinking? But anyways, what you want to do is start with a dome-shaped container. You can use a sphere generator in the description to help you out. And you can see this is a pretty large circle, 25 by 25, and then I increased its height. Don't worry about exact height. And then we are going to put a dome on it. For now, just focus on that and focus on the positions on where you want them. Remember, you're likely going to have to include power lines somewhere into here, because, well, that's kind of the point of a nuclear plant. We want power lines going in somewhere so that way, it can actually transfer the electricity. We're not just heating water for no reason after all. Reactor vessel complete. You can see it's a very generic dome. This is precisely what it is. It's just a concrete dome to make sure the radiation doesn't escape. You'd need a hazmat suit to go in here, and it would be kind of dangerous. But for now, we don't worry about the safety precautions. We want to build this outline of a reactor in Minecraft. It's a very simple idea, and you don't have to worry about any of the interiors, nothing like that. You give it some supports, and then you build the individual pieces. If you are really dedicated to building those interiors, then iron bars would be best for the uranium, and then you do the graphene and black stained glass. So there, you'd have a very nice reactor, and then we'd connect it to another building. This building should be also pretty generic. Make sure to include a normal entrance into it. This will be a nice square building. It will be our turbine thing, and we're going to copy it over there for reactor number 2. Afterwards, you might want to connect it to the power plant on the surface, like right here where you see the cyan terracotta. You might want to connect it right there, but considering we have this tube in the middle, perhaps you don't need to. By the way, this is a copying error. Make sure you have that nice smooth stone basin. Right here, we have the reactor itself, with a catwalk going around for any repairs or emergency things, whatnot. Remember, safety is key in these kinds of builds. Of course, nothing's actually going on, but let's ignore that. But it's pretty much a diagram. This is the actual reactor, and then right here is the condenser. If you want to actually build the inside of the reactor, then if we turn on night vision, we can go inside. Well, we have control rods and then some iron bars representing the uranium. Not necessarily the most accurate build, but still. By the way, a sheep wandered in here and now it's part of it. It's not necessary though. A nice little laptop, well, not a laptop, a desktop. And then you can see armor stand with chainmail helmet hidden in here. Then we have the black and cyan concrete and terracottas, things like that. Anyways, this build also has the little concrete pipe going out of it. This is cyan, and this will go into the rest of it. Make sure you also have hazard plating. You can see here, this is, well, yellow and black. And if we go in here, by the way, don't use too much green in the build unless you're going for that very stereotypically nuclear vibe. Uranium's not actually green. But going out here, we can see it's a 3-layered building, and it's quite large. So let me discuss it. This building's size, dimensions, whatnot, don't worry about it. It's not very specific. You just need to have a room. It can be shorter than this. Make it click into the reactor. You can see over there, we have a placeholder model of it. Looks pretty nice. We have some gray concrete across the ceiling, and then we have some holes so that way semis can get in here and unload things. Fake generators here, you can notice them in this part of the reactor as well. Make sure to use lots of buttons, candles, and levers, other redstone components that go nowhere, things like that. And then, of course, the 2 additional layers. That's mainly for the things like the turbines, so that way electricity is actually being produced rather than just hot water. And then this area right in front, iron doors. This is going to be our disinfecting unit because, of course, radiation poisoning is a real deal. Even though a hazmat suit will protect you from most of it, still, we don't want to be walking out and irradiating everyone else who's just trying to mind their own business in the safer parts. By the way, you could also thicken up your walls a bit more so that way on the outside you can include a bit of graffiti. You can see here it says Unit 1. The other one is going to be done in green and blues, and it will say Unit 2. Notice the incorporation of not just concrete, but concrete powder, wool, and a bunch of different colors. Try doing it. It makes it a lot more interesting. Because if we just build all gray, it gets really boring. That's why I also swapped my logo onto this, so, things like that. You want to make it a bit more than just gray structure. Give it a little bit of flair and personality. We're going to be including a lot of that in the landscaping portion. But anyways, well, that's a lot of jabbering. For now, just build some layers, make sure it's well lit. If you turn off night vision, it should look still decently well lit, even if you can't do 100% of the place. Still, try incorporating a lot of it. Windows on this section are probably fine. Anyways, on the inside here, I've labeled everything. This is the majority of what's in a plant. Of course, a real one would be larger, even more complicated, but this one is everything you actually need. Of course, we have a generator. All these things are labeled, so that way you know what you're doing. And then right here, of course, we have condensate heaters, so that way the stuff keeps going. We need some railroad tracks in here, actually, to make sure that some of the heavier things can be moved. Maybe a forklift, of course, a notification, hey, this is the Unit 1, in case you want to walk into Unit 2 when you're told to go to Unit 1 and something goes wrong. Hey boss, I repaired the wrong thing, the other one's still damaged. Yeah, that's a good way to lose your job. By the way, those are power supplies, and of course, there's more of them throughout. Then, right here, we have some miscellaneous things like the water pump and the strainer. We have an oil tank here, so that way we can lubricate all the joints and make sure that they don't go dry, all creaky, and everything breaks. This is the main condenser that turns the steam back into water, and then some turbines. And of course, we have a generator and the turbines. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be next to each other, but, there's only so much you can do. Of course, right here, you can see at the top, we have a crane that could move back and forth and pick things up. A lot of tough, polished walls are being used to represent pipes. Include a bunch of them. Makes it appear a lot more realistic. And now, we have this place. Don't forget, you need 2 ways to get in and out for vehicles. And if you have a road connected to here, potentially add it. But of course, we also need a way for other things. Maybe put a warehouse nearby. But of course, that's a separate thing. And of course, we had the second one right here. And on the outside, we have these little things. I can't remember their name, but add campfires. These help distill some of the water away and remove moisture. I'm pretty sure those are moisture removers, actually. Wow. But anyways, we have the units here. And now, it's time to wall this place off and start doing some landscaping. I recommend going to where you want the front of the build to be and build a small generic building similar to those buildings over there. And of course, you can decorate these. And then, an iron bar fence going all across the premises will be needed as well. Because of course, you don't want people getting access to radioactive materials, especially some of it being plutonium. You don't want that. Once you have the fences in, your town will look nice. You could have a hotel, a clock tower, cafe, some hot air balloons, a giant foreboding nuclear plant. So yeah, it's certainly a bit more interesting now that it has its fence in. So here's everything. Right here, cobwebs, we have weaving, which means those are readily available in survival mode, so yay, we can have that. And then we have the iron bars, pretty simple idea. Go inside, notice the white stained glass meant to represent more durable stuff. And you can see the desk right here. It's a very simple one. Carpet. Right here, banners are hidden in the ground with some good old lanterns. A TV, currently not on. If it was on, it would just be playing Friends on repeat. A few basic chairs. And what do you know? Some sideways looms, file sorting. And then a bathroom. Nothing terribly interesting in here. And then, finally, the actual place. Notice I added some flags to it. Of course, USA, and you can see some pale wood buttons. If you want to do your own country, of course, you're free to do that. In that case, I do have a video that could help you with that. But anyways, you can see right here, we have a little foundation, more tough walls, and then right here, because USA, well, of course we have to have a state flag. This is Florida. And, well, yeah, there are nuclear plants in Florida. Pretty cool state. And then I added some smooth stone up here. Looks like ladders, non-functional. And then finally, we have another building. By the way, here, this will be an area where you could potentially put a power station if you wanted to. And then, of course, this, you can see a little bit more graffiti of typical nuclear waste. And note, it's not green in real life. I need to specify that every time. And then if we go on the inside, there's not really anything. Pretty much, we want a nuclear waste pool. At the bottom, add some yellow concrete barrels, and then fill the whole place up with water. Surprisingly, it's actually safe to swim in that water. And then right here, just make a little platform, maybe put some arbitrary crates, make sure it's well lit, things like that. It's not a very important room. I mean, it is important, but you get what I mean. Then we can start working on some of the beautification procedures. Like here, the roads, I added more roads. You can see how they connect in a reasonable manner, in case you ever wanted to add a warehouse to something like this. And then of course we're going to be texturing the pathways, maybe adding some statues, and then landscaping, things like that. Remember, this isn't just the gray place, it's also a ton of people's workplace. Make it pretty. We don't want this to just be the gray place after all. Right here, very simple building. It's our waste pool. You can see it's actually just a bunch of tuff being suspended by chains. And of course this water is safe unless you get too close, because water absorbs radiation very well. We have a crane to get things out once they're ready to be barreled after like 9 years. And then you can see right here, some levers to move a hypothetical crane, some boxes, things like that. Not the most complex building, but of course, on the other side we have the graffiti on it, and you can see it's just a waste barrel. By the way, we did all the landscaping. Yeah, it's a bit to take in, so of course there's going to be a little bit of a lengthy explanation, but otherwise, this tutorial is done once that's finished. Right here, at the entrance, you can see a bunch of landscaping has been done, and this is a little excessive. It can take a very long time to do things like this. You don't have to do something as marvelous, hence why the rest of the build is a little bit simpler. But here's the idea. We grow some large oaks. You can use /place feature fancy oak in order to do that. We mix in some terracottas and concrete in order to make it look like they have flowers and such in a non-creative mode only manner. I don't like when people use only the top half of tall flowers. It looks cheap. And then right here, more dark oak bushes. And then for any area we don't have anything to do with, just bone meal the ground and cut out any of the tall grass. Pretty simple idea there. And then these bushes, simple idea. We have dark oak mixed in with red concrete. This open area here can be used for a picnic bench, or picnic anything. Maybe incorporate some benches and lighting into this build. I'll probably do that off camera, and then we'll see it in the final shots of the video. And then, of course, I shrunk the area over here. I realized I wanted this for something else. Don't make your area too big, because, well, then you won't have room for other things. Make it only as big as it needs to be. And then over here, some custom dark oak trees, nothing fancy, no stripped logs, no fences, things like that. It's literally just the stuff you find in the wooden mansion. And then right here, more of that, the azalea bushes, pretty interesting tactic. You place down all oak, and then you speckle in some of the flowering azalea. I'm going to be mixing the two for increased contrast. And then you place more flowering azaleas above it, and then you fill it in. You can alternate this in order to make sure that even the insides have flowering, rather than just having the outside. And then of course more generic stuff here, and then the excessive flower arrangements around the cooling plant. I don't think this is necessarily how you're supposed to do it, but oh well. And then of course we have a little triangle here with more stuff. It's not terribly complicated. As long as you're incorporating a lot of greenery, it looks very good. Now finally, just incorporate some street lights. And for reference, here's a model I've built of one before, things like this. Make sure it's well lit, and now let's look at it in vibrant visuals. Right here, this is the completed build in vibrant visuals. You can see a bunch of sea lanterns have been hidden under the bushes, and it looks really nice here. Regardless of edition of the game, as long as you know what you're doing, have the right blocks, well, you can make this and it looks really good, and it's decently accurate. Of course, I can't get everything, but this gets a general idea across and is quite detailed. And even if I was wrong, still, it looks really cool. We have the cooling plant towers, some buildings that normally are flat, but has a little bit more going on, and then even the nice landscaping. The water even looks really good in here, probably a lot more clean than it really is. But still, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.